U.S. Customs just released this new drone video of a new border wall system in Arizona. The Trump administration wants America to know that despite obstruction from Congress, they are working on making the southern border stronger and less porous. So this is the after picture with the improvements here, and this is the before. According to CPB, this is the same section of border wall back in 2005. You can see from the video here, it looks like an all-out jailbreak. Now, according to reports, DHS is currently replacing 124 miles of fencing with new wall in the El Paso, the El Centro, and the Tucson sectors. In mid-September, the government expects to start building an additional 5 miles in the Yuma sector. And joining us now for more on this is Ken Cuccinelli, the acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. He also served as the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia. He's a good friend of Newsmax. Ken, great to talk to you again. Thanks for coming on.
Good to be with you, John.
All right, so Axios is reporting today that there has not been a single new mile of border fencing built. Now the report relies on one unnamed DHS official. It seems a little thin to me, but can you clear up what's going on? I know you were just down on the border. What's the truth when it comes to construction of new border wall?
Well, you know, the video you just showed is actually very helpful. If you want to call irrelevant border controls a wall, that's what we had there before. Now we have a wall that works. And I was just in my third sector of the border this past week, second and third Laredo and Rio Grande Valley. And they both tell us, look, don't let anybody tell you this stuff doesn't work. When you put barriers up that match the terrain, it works. And we've been putting it up with the Trump administration's been putting it up in the most critical areas, with more to come, and with the very recent, literally we're still only days after a court ruling that frees up the Department of Defense money and the Corps of Engineers to build wall in parallel to Customs and Border Protection's effort. So you'll see a massive acceleration of this going forward. And we'll fix exactly the kind of circumstances you saw there in that one sector in the video you played at the beginning of this segment.
But this is, again, just to be clear, this is improvements to existing border fencing. What about the part where has there been any new border fencing built, any new borders adding on to the miles that already exist?
Well, where you saw it, it was taken down and real wall was put up. So what we've been putting up has been effective, and in many of the areas there was nothing effective, John. So, you know, if people want to say there were blocks to block vehicles, great. People walked across the border anyway. Well, now no one's coming across in those sections. So this is working, and it will continue to expand very dramatically over the course of the next year and a half. And
you just mentioned that very important Supreme Court ruling that says the administration can divert money from the Pentagon to build more border wall. In your opinion, what sector, what needs the most right now? If you could take that money and do with it whatever you wanted, where would you put that money?
Well, of course, not surprisingly, the differences vary across the border, but in the Rio Grande Valley, you have the largest and consistently have had the largest number of illegal alien crossings of the whole border. So you look at numbers like that, and you know that's a priority area for new money coming in and new wall to be built, new barriers of every kind, and realize we also have to contend with the river there, which bends and winds, which can create its own challenges in building wall, things like having to use eminent domain, and also trying to accommodate farmers and ranchers near the border. So all of those are challenges that require sensitivity to local concerns, while still moving ahead as quickly as we can to improve the security of our southern border.
Yeah, everybody said at the beginning how difficult this process would be, and I think we're seeing that play out. You know, a lot of various factors, but the fight goes on. And you're not pulling any punches either, Ken, are you? Last week, you teed off on former House Speaker Paul Ryan, and here's what you said.
I mean, when Paul Ryan was the Speaker, Paul Ryan submarined the best opportunity we had legislatively when Bob Goodlatte's bill, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, came through. And not enough people will challenge their own leadership in the GOP to beat them down when they are wrong.
I wanted to ask you this question in response to that, Ken. What do you think was Paul Ryan's true motivation for submarining that bill, as you said?
Well, he opposed the policy. He is, despite being the Republican Speaker of the House and often giving lip service to border security. When the rubber met the road, he never did. And I think fundamentally it's because he not just didn't agree with it, he flat out opposed it. And he wasn't alone in that leadership. And unfortunately, then Chairman of Judiciary Bob Goodlatte wasn't able to harness enough votes to get over the 218 to get out of the House. And it would have taken very little support from the leadership to achieve that. And yet, instead, Paul Ryan submarined it.
Well, some of those members of the Republican leadership remain. Do you think the same thing would happen today, even if Paul Ryan weren't there? Let's say the GOP gets back control. They have, and a bill gets through. Do you think the GOP leadership would do the same thing today?
Well, I think that what you're going to see here, you've seen a lot of policy changes that the Trump administration has implemented. I've been part of making that happen. You're also going to see legislative proposals, affirmative legislative proposals, where everybody, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, they're all going to have to get on the record and take a position on these things. And the American people are going to decide what they want on a full-blown policy going forward. And I don't think the opportunity to hide behind some other bill is going to exist for anybody of either party going forward in the future.
And we heard, what Chuck Schumer wants to do with those types of funds. He wants to allocate the money for the border to gun control. We'll see how that plays out with voters in 2020. I also wanted to mention North Carolina and Governor Roy Cooper there. He vetoed a bill recently that would have required local law enforcement to ask about a prisoner's immigration status to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. Why do you think the governor, Democrat in this case, decided to veto that bill?
I know Roy. We served as attorneys general in bordering states, and my observation over the years is that a veto like that is his way of kowtowing to his extreme left wing. It is not a policy-based decision, and on the policy, it's awfully hard to legitimize not making the inquiry in this day and age about among criminals. I mean, let's remember who these sheriffs would be talking to. These are people who are accused of or convicted of crimes about their immigration status. The obvious rationale being to speed along their handover to ICE and deportation.
Do you think he'll eventually regret this decision?
I think so, yes. I mean, bad policy has a funny way of coming back to bite you. I mean, I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. I need to look no further than the two bordering Maryland counties, Prince George's and Montgomery County, where in the last couple of months they've proudly proclaimed their sanctuary status and promptly had rapes and murders by people who they were protecting from being deported.
Right. And like you mentioned, these things have a funny way of coming back on the people who push these policies. One last issue I wanted to talk about with you, and sort of, part of popular culture now. There was a recent episode of this show on Netflix called Orange is the New Black, and they featured an immigration detention hotline, the National Immigration Detention Hotline. Basically, this is a number that people can call and get tips on how to deal with law enforcement if they find themselves detained. And now, a group of people are saying that ICE is attempting to silence its critics by blocking this hotline. I wanted to get your reaction to that, Ken.
When you look at how ICE operates, they have done outreach and preparation for the affected communities on whom they're enforcing the law that no domestic law enforcement agency does. You look back at that Mississippi operation with 7 work sites. They prepared to handle people's children. They prepared to deal with kids coming out of school. They prepared to deal with parents who were breaking the law but were the sole caretaker in their household. That's why you saw 300 of the 680 arrested bonded out. So that those were for humanitarian reasons. They go so far beyond the call of ordinary law enforcement duty, and they get no credit for it. They get this kind of dumping on all the time. And these are people obeying the law, enforcing the law, and protecting us from the exact kind of criminals you and I were talking about earlier. And if the people in Congress who complained about ICE so much wanted to change the law they're supposed to enforce, they're in Congress. They can do that. And yet that isn't what they do. They scream and yell and complain instead, and it makes you think that maybe they don't have any interest in good policy, but they think ICE is a good whipping boy for some bad politics.
No, it's a good point. There's a number of Democratic senators running for president right now, and if they really wanted to, you think they could get their heads together and at least try to push some sort of bill to abolish ICE if they were really serious about it. If they were really serious, but we don't think they are. Great to talk to you, Ken, as always. Thank you for your time. Look forward to checking back in with you
John.
in the near future.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel. Newsmax TV is now available for free on your smartphone. Just go to your iPhone or Android store and download the free Newsmax TV app. Then you can watch free TV news with an American spin anytime, anywhere in the world. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.